actually, right now there's a BIP 353, which is human readable wallet addresses for Bitcoin. Because there's a need for that. Like people want to be able to send money without having to copy and paste or send a long string of addresses and stuff. Like it just makes it a lot easier. Like for example, there was a few years ago, the truckers in Canada, there was a GoFundMe for that, like where people sent a lot of money, donated a lot of money to those truckers. And then GoFundMe just said, you know what, we're not going to give it to the truck. We're not going to give it to the truckers. We're going to just distribute it to wherever we want. So, it would have been much easier and the money wouldn't have been stolen and taken and given elsewhere if people had, for example, sent it to truckers at Bitcoin. Then the money would go, and it's easy to remember. You don't have to copy and paste. Everybody could, would just know, send it to truckers at Bitcoin, and then they could get the money that way.
Hello, this is the Bitcoin Libertarian. Our guest today is Mike Carson. Mike has been deeply involved in the Bitcoin ecosystem since its early days. He's the founder of Space Protocol, a revolutionary decentralized naming system built on Bitcoin that provides scalable, permissionless digital identities anchored directly to the blockchain. In previous his cyberpunk development team, Mike has driven innovations like the Akron wallet, a 100% cyberpunk Bitcoin wallet launched in May 2025 that supports Space Protocol, and the protocol's mainnet launch in November 2024. His work emphasized self-sovereign identities, drawing parallels between trustless money and trustless naming, and aims to scale Bitcoin to billions of users via features like subspaces. Mike's ventures bridge traditional domain expertise with blockchain future, making him a key voice in the push for privacy and control in online identities. Today, we will talk about Space Protocol, Akron wallet, and why Bitcoin is important for online identities. Mike, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show.
And thank you very much for being here. The first question is the first question I do to everyone, and is, how were you, Orange Pill?
How what? Oh, how was I? Yeah, it was from Hacker News, I think. I've read Hacker News for over 10 years. I love it. And I remember there, like way back when Bitcoin first launched, people posted about Bitcoin. And there's so much that was going through the feed that I, ignored it the first couple of times. But then after like maybe the third time, I was like, I should check this out. And so, yeah, from Hacker News, somebody posted it there. And after just looking into it, I realized, on a lot of different levels, this Bitcoin is something revolutionary. So, yeah, that's how I was orange pilled.
Excellent. So sometimes, yeah, it takes a couple of times of seeing what is Bitcoin until you get 100% orange pill. But when you take the orange pill, there is no going back. It's like in the Matrix. Once you take it, and it's no going back. So for our listeners and for myself as well, what exactly is Space Protocol?
So Spaces Protocol is a decentralized naming system built on Bitcoin. There's no necessary changes to Bitcoin protocol. It's built on Bitcoin with a very light footprint. So it's decentralized naming that can scale to billions of names, all on Bitcoin, secured by Bitcoin. So it's anchored in Bitcoin. I guess a way to explain it is, what Bitcoin did for money is, people before Bitcoin, people had to rely on banks to hold their money. And then you had to ask permission from banks to use your own money. And you also have to rely on other things like the Federal Reserve, whoever's printing the money, you have to trust that. And so the same thing exists for naming. right now you have to rely on uh, centralized, centralized authorities for naming, for domain names, for example. You have to rely on domain registrars like GoDaddy. You also have to rely on registries, um, like VeriSign, or whoever controls it. Like, for example, .ai, you have to rely on the Anguilla registry, like who's running the registry for that, and then you also have to rely on ICANN. So there's a lot of different ways where names are being centralized, not only domain names, but like usernames, for example. Your username on YouTube or Twitter or whatever, it can be taken away, and it has been. A lot of times people have been silenced, for things that they've said. So, you know, from my standpoint, and I was in the traditional domain name industry for years before I started this, but it's from my perspective, money is a super important, extremely important thing for society, and it's urgently needed that it's decentralized, and that's what Bitcoin solves. But I think Bitcoin can also solve decentralized naming. Naming to me is a super important thing for society. Like, we all have names, cities have names, domain names, usernames, everything. People need ways to remember things without having to like remember a string of numbers and letters and stuff like that. You just naming is super important, and it's to me there's just as an urgent need. Oh, sorry.
Mike, I think that there is a problem with your microphone or with your headphones because I am feeling I'm listening to a noise since we started. Sometimes it goes back, and now when you are moving, I feel like a noise. I don't know if it's the connection or something.
Okay, it's whenever I move. I mean, is it better if I hold it like
Now
this? Or
now it's okay. Now it's okay.
it's okay?
Yes.
Okay, I'll try just holding it like this. We'll see if that works.
Yes.
Just let me know if
Yeah,
it acts.
now I see I heard, he listened the
Okay,
let me check. Yes, now I keep listening too.
it's okay now?
Now it's okay. Yes,
Okay, just let me know if it happens again.
yes,
I see this echo cancellation thing, but I can't turn it
yeah.
on this
But the
side.
problem, no, the echo cancellation is when you are not using earphones. That's
Okay,
the point.
okay. Well, we'll see how this goes. Um, so yeah, I think that, there's just as much of an urgent need for decentralized naming as there is for decentralized money, and Bitcoin, I think, can solve it in the same way that it solved money. um, to me, Bitcoin is a decentralized ledger, and it's like a decentralized database, and uh, the first killer app for this was money. But I think I think naming is could be the second killer app for Bitcoin.
And guide me through this, like why is again is really important naming for everyday using, because some people don't see it. And how does the spaces protocol work to with the Bitcoin network to get this unique naming for each one that is using that?
Yeah, the way it works is basically it's broken up into two levels, similar to how traditional domains are. Like right now, there's like .com. For traditional domains, there's .com, .net, .org, and then underneath that is the second level, like Google.com. And so for the Spaces protocol, it's similar. There's top level spaces which are auctioned off directly on the Bitcoin blockchain. They're done with Bitcoin transactions on chain, and you bid in auctions, and you can win and register a top level name that way. And then the second level under that is what we call subspaces, and that's scaled off chain using zero knowledge proofs, and you can scale that to billions of names, and we think breaking it up like this is important for scaling reasons, because you can't have billions of names on the Bitcoin blockchain. Like, it just won't support that. And also it's important for scaling.
Now, hello. Now I'm not listening to you. No, now I'm not listening to you.
Okay, I'm gonna get some other headphones. I'll be right back. Okay.
Yes, no problem. So we are trying to solve the problem of the headphones that Mike has. So sorry to the audience, but this is what happened when we go live, when we do a live stream. And that's the way we like doing it, because it's more authentic and has these issues. But if you are not following our live stream, we upload the episode a couple of days after in our new YouTube channel, Libertarian BTC, and in our Rumble channel, Bitcoin Libertarian. Remember that our former YouTube channel was taken down by this centralized entity that is YouTube. And now we're trying to fight back with Rumble and with a new channel. Let's see if Mike is back.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So
But
I couldn't find other headphones, so I just had to use my
do you
laptop.
because now I listen the echo. Do you have the echo cancellation?
It says it can't be changed while recording.
Because hello.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the problem is that now I heard the echo. So what?
Again?
So that's the magic of doing live.
I don't know if this is
Now
any better.
now it seems correct. So now it seems correct. So let's keep moving. Let's keep moving forward. So again, the first important thing is why naming is important, and how does Spaces protocol solve the problem of the naming issue.
So why it's important is that, names are taken down. Here's one example. The top level domain .cat, CAT, for Catalonia. There were people who posted, who hosted websites that had information that was, that said negative things about the Spanish government. So the Spanish government raided the offices of .cat, shut down the websites, and arrested the CTO for sedition. So, governments will take down things that they don't think is that they don't support. I mean, another example is countless of examples of Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, where posts and people have been taken down. Their usernames have been taken because they posted things that did not align with what whoever's running it agrees with. So there's an urgent need for people to own their own names and not have someone take it away. Another example is the Squarespace hack. There's a lot of crypto companies that were forced to rely on third parties for security. They had to rely on a domain registrar. It's like with Bitcoin, you don't have to rely on a bank, but some people are forced to have money in the bank, and then the bank, you have to rely on the security of the bank. For this, they had to, there was no other option but to rely on the security of a domain registrar. And Squarespace was hacked, and people lost money. Funds were taken, cryptos stolen from that. And it's not the fault of, the people hosting the website or the companies. It's that they were forced to rely on a domain registrar, somebody else to hold their names. And, I don't think people should be forced to have somebody else hold their name. Their name is, it's like your money. It's your name. Why should somebody else have it? Why should you have to ask permission from somebody else or rely on somebody else for your name? You know, so to me, there's an urgent need for self-sovereignty. This is about self-sovereignty. It's about people being able to own their own, name and money without somebody else controlling it and giving permission for it. And so that's the urgent need. Um, and Spaces Protocol solves that because it's decentralized naming on Bitcoin. It's anchored in Bitcoin. It's just as decentralized and secure as Bitcoin, as money, as Bitcoin as money on Bitcoin. Spaces Protocols is just as decentralized and self-sovereign um, for naming on Bitcoin.
And how does it work? Because I saw that you have your handle, Mike at Bitcoin. How does it work?
Sure. But yeah, you mean how can you use it, or
Yes. So how does it work, and how can people use it?
yeah, okay. So what you do is, if you want to buy a subspace like Mike at Bitcoin or whatever at Bitcoin, um, right now you can go to @bitcoin.com and register it there. And what happens is you'll get a certificate, that proves that you own that name, and no one can ever take it away from you. It doesn't expire. It's your name. So you'll have the keys for that name. And then we have peer-to-peer network called Fabric, where you can basically post data to that name, or like records for that name. So for example, you could host a onion address, or you could point an onion address. So like Mike at Bitcoin could be pointed to an onion address, like a website that is basically uncensorable. So people could go to Mike at Bitcoin and see the information that I post that can't be censored by any domain registrar, can't or ICANN or anything. It's owned by me.
Yes, because sometimes what happens with the domain register I was talking with you about before the talk, that we used to have some business in the domain space as well, and the domain register, they probably ban your domain because they don't like it. Just they ask a lot of things. If you buy domains, why do you buy? They ban your account. So with this, I think that you cannot get banned. And when you choose your identity that is into Bitcoin, you can point to any domain or to any thing, or just to an onion address.
Yeah. No, you can point to anything. So it could also be like uh, Bitcoin addresses, like private Bitcoin addresses. So like you could send, Bitcoin to Mike at Bitcoin. Um, and, it would be private. It wouldn't be like Ethereum, where you do, like, if you send to .eth, you can look up every single transaction and see the balance and everything like that. Like um, you could, you could do it in a way so that you could send Bitcoin to it. And actually right now there's a BIP 353, which is human readable wallet addresses for Bitcoin, because there's a need for that. Like, people want to be able to send money without having to copy and paste or send a long string of addresses and stuff. Like, it just makes it a lot easier. Like, for example, there was a few years ago, the truckers in Canada, there was a GoFundMe for that, like, where people sent a lot of money, donated a lot of money to those truckers, and then GoFundMe just said, you know what, we're not going to give it to the truck. We're not going to give it to the truckers. We're going to just distribute it to wherever we want. So it would have been much easier, and and the money wouldn't have been stolen and taken and given elsewhere if people had, for example, sent it to truckers at Bitcoin. Then the money would go, and it's easy to remember. You don't have to copy and paste. Everybody could would just know, send it to truckers at Bitcoin, and then they could get the money that way. So yeah, so this BIP right now, BIP 353 by Matt Corallo, which is human readable wallet addresses for Bitcoin. And in it, he talks, a lot, like how to make what's the best way to do it. You don't want to rely on another separate blockchain. So his best, the best thing at the time was to use the traditional domain name system, which, as I've mentioned, is completely centralized. So this is a much better, in my opinion, it's a much more decentralized and self-sovereign way to do human readable wallet addresses. So yeah, so you can use it for hosting like websites. You could use it's we purposely built it as a generalized naming system, so it can be used for example, I think like, the top first three uses probably be for like hosting content that can't be taken down. Also sending, for sending of funds, like sending it Mike at Bitcoin. And then also like usernames, like for example, Noster. Right now, people have to send an npub, like follow me on Noster, here's my npub. And it's this huge long string of characters. It'd be much better if you could be follow me Mike at Bitcoin, on Noster. So those are just three of the top that come, the three things that come to mind, the easiest low hanging fruit for this, but there's, lots of other things that it could be used for. It's general purpose naming system.
And how does it work? Because I'm thinking in when you buy your domain or your name or your identity in Spaces protocol, you can change something related like a DNS or something to point to another domain.
Yeah, yes. So basically for subspaces, we're about to release a mobile wallet for that in the next month or so, and that will have all your subspaces. So, like for example, Mike at Bitcoin or whatever, and from there you can manage it and you can set records using this peer-to-peer network fabric. You can set data on that so it can be used for various things. So, but you can also sign things, to prove that you created some. For example, like if I wanted to prove that I made a video, that it was made by me, I could sign it with my get Bitcoin, a key, and it would be proof that I have created that content.
And do you think that this can be used in the future for because one of the things that I think that probably in the future the ownership will be uh, made but will be made or will be stored in the blockchain. Do you think that this can be used in the future to, for example, you own a piece of art, you own a car, or you own a house or whatever?
Yeah, I mean it could be. I mean it. I guess if depending how it's done, but basically, you'll own the name, and you're the only one who can sign with that name. So anything you sign with that is proof that you know, have either created it or own it. So yeah, it's done that way. Um, you know, usernames and domain names, they're digital assets, and there's no reason that they have, like some other things like art and things like that, houses and stuff are physical assets, so it's a little more tricky. But with domain names, especially in usernames, that they're digital assets. So there's no reason that they should not be on a blockchain or that they should not be decentralized. There's just no reason for it. Um, so it's something, actually Satoshi, the first fork of Bitcoin was Namecoin. Like Satoshi talked about naming and stuff. It was one of the first things, one of the first other use cases. It was the first, use case proposed, other use case besides money is naming. So this is something that has been talked about for a while, but it hasn't been possible for various reasons. It hasn't been really possible to scale on Bitcoin before, but now it is with zero knowledge proofs and SegWit and stuff like that.
And how does Spaces achieve scalability to potential billion users?
Uh, so sorry, what was the question? How does it
How
achieve?
how does achieve the scalability to billion users as you mentioned before?
Well, yeah, as I mentioned, like you can scale off chain with zero knowledge proofs. So for example, there could be a billion at Bitcoin names, or, like if you took like all the .com names and put them, into a top level space like at Bitcoin or something, it'd be hundreds of millions, and you could anchor it in Bitcoin. So they're all decentralized and they're anchored in Bitcoin, secured by Bitcoin. So, and that's just one top level space. So you could have other top level spaces. So we think this could help Bitcoin scale to billions of users. If all usernames are, these social networks have billion. Do they have billion? Yeah, billion users or something. It's like so. Like if everybody has uh, a subspace has a username on Spaces protocol, then that's one way we can achieve this. And actually, I just recently took over Friendster, which was like the first social network, and my plan is to give everybody a username on the Spaces protocol on Bitcoin. So there's currently like 500,000 people on the wait list, um, and I plan my plan is that everybody has a username, a decentralized username that they own and control at Friendster. So it's at Friendster on the Spaces protocol.
So it is gonna work Friendster as similar to it's gonna run on Noster.
Yeah, I don't know exactly. Yeah, exactly how. Okay. I plan to work on that. The rest of this year and next year. But yeah, I don't know exactly. Maybe Noster. I don't know. But I want everybody to have decentralized username.
Excellent. So they cannot be kicked out because, as you were telling, YouTube, Facebook, X can kick you out wherever they want, and we cannot keep our names. If you are kicked up, you kick out, your audience doesn't go with you. So you have to rebuild from scratch. It happened to me in YouTube. YouTube kicked me out 2 times.
Really?
So
Yeah.
yes. So
So
now I'm anyways, my channel in YouTube was not so big at that time, but I lost all the show. I lost all the traction, and I have to start from scratch. So that's the problem, that sometimes for people, it's difficult to see Bitcoin because they don't understand. Most of the people don't understand why we need to be sovereign of money, or why money don't have to be controlled by a central party. And more people don't think that the social media, like they don't care about the social media. They don't care what social media is doing with their data, and that they can be kicked out and you lost everything. So all these things, all these protocols. Last week in the Bitcoin conference was I've been in a side event that they were talking about Noster. We need to push this much forward, and we need to push the people to understand why we need these technologies.
Yeah. Yeah, I think people don't. A lot of yes, it's the same with Bitcoin. People are like, "Why do we need Bitcoin?" Banks work fine, but that they don't work fine for everybody. And like money doesn't work fine for everybody. Just because it works fine for some people, it's the same with naming. I've heard it a lot also with naming. Why do we need decentralized names? A lot of people in the domain industry, they're like, I see no use case for this, but it's just because they haven't had to deal with it yet. So it's something from a self sovereignty perspective and from a cypherpunk perspective, it's something that's urgently needed. Like desperately needed. It's one of the central pillars of the internet, naming, like, so it's just, to me, it's something that I know it's inevitable. It's going to happen. I don't know if it's going to be Spaces protocol that makes it happen, but it's definitely something so necessary that it's inevitable in my mind.
And do you see, of course, that you say that from the cyberpunk's perspective is a need, is super needed. How do you convince first the rest of Bitcoiners, and second the rest of the people? Because even though I think that all of the Bitcoiners, we know that we don't need banks and we need to get rid of banks. In fact, this week I have to open a bank account for my company, and I just to keep all this amount of documentation and of course pay and now wait a couple of weeks to see if they approve or not. While with Bitcoin, I just download an app, generate 12 words, and it's done. But I think that for most of the people in the Bitcoin community, even in the Bitcoin community, they don't understand why we need this decentralized naming or social media. So how do we convince them?
I think the way to convince them is, you know, compare it to banks. I think, I think that a lot of people will understand that if they understand like why you need a self-sovereign money. I think they'll understand why would you need like a centralized party for your names. Like, why do you need somebody else to control your names? And if you want to show them the urgency of it, I think bring up examples of where the government has taken down things. Like the Catalonia thing is a great example, because the government didn't like what was being hosted on that, so they just raided the offices and took it down. And also usernames like people being silenced, and um, things that should be theirs is taken away from them, and there's no reason that somebody else should have control over it. So I think I think explaining it in terms of how Bitcoin works with money, explaining it to names, and just how there's been problems like with the Squarespace hack, how lots of crypto is stolen because of that. Maybe also bringing up like Satoshi, like it was the first fork of Bitcoin was Namecoin. Just like mentioning that, Satoshi talked about this at the very beginning. It was one of the first other use cases besides money. So I think Bitcoiners will get it, if uh, because it's the same um, as money. It's very similar. For everybody else, uh, it may, um, maybe not everybody needs it. Maybe people will learn the hard way. Um, I think a lot of it is just making it easier for people to use, uh, and sometimes it scares people to to own their own things because they're afraid of losing it. So yeah, maybe it's okay. I think it's okay to have centralized things for people who want some of that, but there's definitely an urgent need for an option to have decentralized. Um, so I think just making it easy to use, showing them how they can use it without, just showing them the benefits and stuff. I think that's probably the way to get everybody else. I mean, I think Bitcoin is a great example because, when I first got into Bitcoin, people were like, the government's going to shut it down. It's, and why do you need that? Money works fine, but you can see how it's spreading because people knew, like, the conviction of the, people, the people in Bitcoin, like the conviction that this is necessary, this is urgent, this is, and we're going to I'm going to spend all my time building on it because I know how important it is. So I think the same thing with Spaces Protocol. It's like that I have conviction for it. I've been working on it for years. I'm building on it, and I see other people, from the people from it's. What's cool is that once you start working on something like this, people from other people just gravitate, towards it, and people become interested and they see the value and they start working on it. So I think it's just that, it's just a process. I think we can learn from how Bitcoin's spreading, and then, uh, you know, it's similar in the
I
same
think
way.
that I heard a couple of times that Bitcoin is kind of virus that is spreading across the people, but it's a good virus, not a bad virus. And as you said, how people come and try to collaborate. I see this in many examples of the Bitcoin community. Like probably example, like I'm not in the tech side of the Bitcoin community, but I'm more in the content creation, on the spreading the word. And someone contacted me, oh, can we be in your show because we are building this thing and we want to talk about that? Yes, no problem. Or you can be in my show, no problem. Don't worry. Share this thing. So I see that the Bitcoin community is super collaborative, especially at this level. I don't know if you see the same.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's amazing, you know. I think when you have like ideas like that, you know, when you have something revolutionary, people recognize it and they're willing to work on it. For you know, they're willing to work on it regardless of, you know, people are willing to go to prison to work on this stuff, you know, because they believe in it so much. So I think when you have something that is truly good for people in the world and it's revolutionary, that too.
Because you come from a cyberpunk background, how do you see all the new trends that are happening into Bitcoin? For example, last week during the the Bitcoin Asia conference, there was a lot of hype around the Bitcoin treasury companies. So, what is what are your thoughts about the Bitcoin Treasury Company? What are your thoughts about today? They reach all the companies together 1 million BTCs. So, you are talking about decentralization. Do you think that this is centralizing Bitcoin and can bring a problem for the Bitcoin community?
think I think that because it's money and there's a lot of money has been made, uh, it attracts some. You know, there's people who try to scam. You know, obviously there's been a lot of that, and it's been bad. But I think also like Wall Street and stuff, like a lot of these companies, they see money, they see how they can make money, and so there's a lot of that involved, which, you know, in some ways helps because the government can't take it down really as much or as easily because it's ingrained so much into the financial system. But at the same time, I think it's important to think of it as like a possible attack on Bitcoin and like how, you know, make sure that Bitcoin stays true to its cypherpunk ideals, that it isn't like coerced into something else. And you know, just making sure that, well, you know, like even like it could be like an attack on the price of Bitcoin. Like Bitcoin's use has to do with its price, and um, you know, if these treasury companies go under and the price goes way down, it could be it's kind of like an attack. I mean, so anyway, I think the key thing is, yeah, thinking of it from making sure it stays true to its cypherpunk ideals above all else, and thinking of, you know, could this be an attack on Bitcoin? How, you know, just make sure that it can withstand it. Uh, and yeah, I think of it like that, like make sure Bitcoin survives above all else, and that it is true to its cypherpunk ideals, that it stays decentralized. Um, that's the most important, and I'm confident it will. I believe that's the that's why a lot of people are working on it, and you know, there's a lot of people who that's where it started. That's where like Bitcoin started with these cypherpunk ideals. So I'm confident that it can withstand it and stay true to these ideals. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, it's a way. It's a good way to listen to other voices. I have my own opinion of the treasury companies that I think that if they are really aligned with Bitcoin and they stay with Bitcoin, I think it's something positive. But there are going to be a lot of them that will fail, and we need to think that, as you said, probably if there is no an attack on Bitcoin, and we always need to think Bitcoin to survive. But to be honest, I think that Bitcoin will survive. Bitcoin doesn't need always say Bitcoin doesn't need Wall Street, Bitcoin doesn't need treasury companies, Bitcoin doesn't need government, Bitcoin doesn't even need us. We all of these entities need Bitcoin. That's the thing, and that's why it's a living organism that is surviving to everything. So, and tell me a little bit about the Akron wallet, how it works.
It's the first wallet that supports the Spaces protocol, but you can use it for Bitcoin transactions. It's super lightweight. You don't have to like run it on top of a Bitcoin full node or anything. It syncs quickly, and it is it's cypherpunk. It's 100% open source. And yeah, it's the first wallet that supports the Spaces protocol. So like, for example, um you can send Bitcoin to like at Carson or something like that, and it'll go to my wallet. So yeah, yeah.
And yes.
You can also like open auctions for top level spaces. So you can, if you wanted like at Bitcoin Libertarian, or at Libertarian or whatever, you could open the auction for that. So the way that auctions work on the Spaces protocol, you can open an auction for any name, and then the you can bid on it, and whichever names every day, the top 10 names that have the highest bids go to a 10-day auction. And so anybody can bid, and bidding is just a Bitcoin transaction. At the end of the 10 days, whoever has the highest bid gets the name. And we made it cypherpunk, like all the auction proceeds are burned. It's just burned Bitcoin. It doesn't go anywhere. Also, if I bid like 1 Bitcoin for a name, and then you bid 1.1 Bitcoin, you pay back. I get my bid back. So it's the only person who pays is the person who wins. Everybody else gets their bids back. But yeah, and you can do all that with Akron really easily. At akron.io you can get it. And so yeah, it just allowed you to interact with and bid and open names, uh, and work with top level names on the Spaces protocol. Our wallet that will support subspaces will be released in like a month or so.
Excellent. So basically, the process to get an identity in Spaces protocol is I go, I select whatever I want, and I bid for that. And I need to wait for
Yeah,
10 days. If
yeah,
someone, yes.
that's for a top level space. So that's kind of like the .com or the .net,
Ah,
or of Spaces protocol. If you just want like a subspace, like a name, there will be ways to get that. Like, for example, you can go to @bitcoin.com and you can get like libertarian at Bitcoin or whatever
mm.
there. So yeah, that'll be easier once we release this Subspaces wallet in like a month or so.
And all the spaces, these things, these transactions are all paid in Bitcoin.
Yeah, on the top level, for the top level, the auctions are all done on Bitcoin. They're Bitcoin transactions. For subspaces, you can buy those with dollars, or you can pay with Bitcoin or Lightning. And once we release our mobile wallet, you'll be able to pay like with Apple Pay or whatever and get your name. So we're gonna make it easy to get your name.
Excellent. And you wrote an article that says not your keys, not your name. Huh?
Yeah, Bitcoin Magazine.
In
Yeah.
Bitcoin. So why naming is the next killer app for Bitcoin, and how does Spaces address the historical reliance on trust in names?
Yeah. I mean, I think my view is that the Bitcoin blockchain is a decentralized database, and the first killer app for that was money. And there will be other killer apps, like, for example, naming, I think, is another one that will use Bitcoin. I mean, Jameson Lopp has a great article about Bitcoin as a trust anchor. And basically what it comes down to is the decentralized database on Bitcoin is secured by, huge hash power, proof of work, and so that database is decentralized and secured by all that proof of work, all that electricity and power and stuff. And so that database has value, and the market for that space, is, I think it's it it, it will provide, like, it's a trust anchor. So you can, right now we use it for money, which is super important. You need to have that backed by all that security and trust. And so I think other apps can tie into that and use Bitcoin, use the block space as a trust anchor for things that you need, similar applications, like, for example, naming, just showing ownership of digital assets. Basically, ownership of digital assets, I think, is a is a really good use case for that space. But maybe there's others too.
Excellent. And looking to the future, how what's next for the space protocol and all the ventures that you are building?
Well, yeah, right now. So this last month we've been working years on the Spaces protocol. We launched to mainnet in November of last year with the top level spaces, and we've been working on subspaces for the last year. And we just released um, a way to create subspaces with zero knowledge proofs and to do the commitments into Bitcoin blockchain. And so we're testing on mainnet. We're going to be testing on mainnet for this next month, and then in October, first couple weeks of October, we plan to launch these subspaces to mainnet. And that'll be the final piece of the puzzle. And we can scale to billions of users, billions of names on Bitcoin. And then from that point on, it's building use ways to make it easier to use, and do things with, like Nostr integration, wallet addresses, like Onion, tying it to Onion, so you could host content securely and in a self-sovereign way. So that's our plan. And yeah, we're also planning to be at TenantCon, um, and hopefully we submitted to do a workshop there. So if anyone plans to be at TabConf in Atlanta, uh, let us know. We could, we'll be there doing hopefully doing a workshop, but we'll be there regardless. So.
Excellent, excellent. And let's move to the last questions of the podcast that I do to everyone. Is the first one is how do you see the future of Bitcoin?
I think Bitcoin will become more used. I think, I guess what I see is there'll be ups and downs like there always have been. There will be huge bull markets, and then there'll be crashes. There'll be different things that had happened, but what I see is the long-term trend is more and more usage and becoming a more important part of the world financial system. I know personally from my own use cases, like with domain names, like when I was working with my previous company, Park.io, uh, it was so much easier when I was working, especially when I was working with the .ai registry and in Anguilla. It was so much easier to transact with Bitcoin. It was pretty much instant, because when we had to go through banks, it was like took days, and we didn't know if it could get there, and there's fees and all this stuff. So that's just one example. me using it, and also just I know from experience, like, if you're traveling internationally and stuff, like, just knowing that you have access to that money when banks can cut you off and stuff. So I think people will just realize it'll become a more and more important part of the financial world. But I also think I I think there will be people will be surprised how it will be used for other things, important things like naming. I think there will be more and more other kind of like killer apps built on top of Bitcoin that doesn't take away from it in any way. In fact, it'll help Bitcoin. It'll make it more secure. It'll incentivize the miners more, and they'll make the blockchain more secure. So I think the surprising thing will be other use cases for it, and those things will only help Bitcoin. So yeah, that's what I see for the future.
And which kind of killer apps do you envision for the future?
I mean, the the main one I'm working on now is naming. I don't know. I'm sure there could be other things, but my head is completely focused on the naming part right now. So.
Excellent, excellent. And the last question is, if you had the chance to sit down with Satoshi and have a coffee, what would you say or ask him, her, or them?
uh, yeah, that would be interesting. I mean, they made in my mind, they made something completely revolutionary. They solved a math problem that's never been solved before in history. Like, they completely changed money. So that would be a interesting conversation. I mean, I would definitely be talking about naming with them. I'd be talking about decentralized naming
Of
and just like their thoughts on Namecoin and like how this is different, how things like that. So
course, that when you start talking about the first fork that was Namecoin, I was thinking by myself, when I ask him the last question, he's gonna say for sure that he will talk about naming with Satoshi. So, Mike, thank you very much for your time. Anything else you want to add, and how people can contact you?
thanks so much for having me on the show. I'm sorry about the sound stuff. Yeah, people can check out the Spaces Protocol at spacesprotocol.org. From there, you can find our Telegram, a link to our Telegram group, which is where we're really active and we post there a lot. And people can feel free to ask questions in the Telegram group. You can also find the GitHub repo there. And yeah, if anybody has questions for me, they can contact me, mike@impervious.com.
Excellent. Mike, again, thank you very much for your time and the best for Space Protocol, and and hope we can put billions of people to understand why naming is important, why all decentralization is important, and we can be more free at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks. Thanks so much.
And thank you very much to everyone who is on the other side. If you like the episode, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to all our social media. Our YouTube is Libertarian BTC. Our YouTube in Spanish, Libertarian BTC ESP. Our Rumble, I don't know how to use. I think that we don't have a name, but you can search for the Bitcoin Libertarian and we are there. Our Instagram, the Bitcoin Libertarian, and our X, the Bitcoin _. Share this episode with the people you love. Share this episode with the people you hate, because we need to reach 8 billion people and make them use Bitcoin. See you in the next episode of our podcast. Stay humble, stack sats, and remember, we are all Satoshi.